Hey Mavericks, welcome to the show. This is the podcast for creative entrepreneurs. We're here to help you have fun being a business owner because you started a business to have a life you love. And there are countless ways to get sidetracked from that, from trendy tactics to some pretty bogus long-held beliefs about what success is supposed to look like. And this podcast is all about bringing you back to what matters, you. Your life, your work, and the legacy you want to create. In this show, you'll get pep talks and practical tools that help you grow and run your business in a way that feels good to you. This is the Be Brilliant in Your Business podcast. Are you ready to play Love Your Business Bingo? This season, we are playing a game all season long to help you be more energized, inspired, and in love with your business. If you're brand new to the bingo game, no problem. You can catch up anytime. Go to lindsaybrownson.com/bingo to download your bingo game cards and get started now. So this week's bingo challenge ties right into my guest on the episode, who you will hear more about in just a moment. I'm excited to share. Your challenge for the week is to don something that delights you. In other words, to put on something that delights you. So there have been many studies about how getting dressed really boosts your mood. And if you've tried this experiment, you definitely know that you feel differently when you are dressed for the day, whether that's getting ready for work or getting ready for other things you've got going on. Being in your PJs can sometimes feel very luxurious, but not for long. It can quickly spiral into being an actual drain on your confidence and your productivity too. Getting dressed creates distinctions in our lives. It's a symbolic shift into who we are becoming next. And what's even greater than the act of getting dressed alone is incorporating meaningful objects into what we are wearing. I talked about this a little bit with our guest, Melissa Kigwa, in episode 101. We were talking then about jewelry and high-end jewelry and how that can really change how you see yourself. But overall, just the impact of a beautiful or meaningful object on how we feel and how we see ourselves in the world. It can be anything from what we're wearing under our clothes to a great shade of lipstick. It might be something that feels really good on your body or something special that you inherited from someone you love, or something that just always makes you feel like the best version of yourself in some way. I have so many examples of this. One example I want to share is the white suit that you can see in my recent photo shoot pics. They are on Instagram, they're on my website. I don't have an occasion to wear a white suit very often, but I have never felt so powerful as when I wear that suit and sit under my neon CEO sign. It just makes me feel like a version of me who I really love. I also have a gorgeous Farm Rio maxi skirt that has fruit and parrots on it. It's in a very bold blue to pink ombre linen. This is just such an amazingly beautiful skirt. It makes me smile every time I see it, and it perfectly represents my playful, creative spirit. It just feels like me. And I love it. So your bingo challenge this week is to don something that delights you in whatever way that means to you. Wear it and notice how it affects you. And if it's appropriate, this is a great challenge for you to share on Instagram. Share a photo or a video of your special wearable and tag me at Lindsay Brownson. All right, enjoy. My guest today is the wonderful Katherine Johnson. She is such a calming presence. I really enjoyed talking with her. She's the founder of True Self, an image consultancy that focuses on helping women look and feel like the leaders they are. Simply stated, they help you hone your personal style, from your wardrobe to your self-concept, so that you're presenting yourself to the world the way that you want to be seen. They focus on leadership because often in leadership positions, women feel like they, quote, have to be a certain way. And I'm paraphrasing this, but you get the point. Instead of fully being in alignment with who they are. This can be challenging from corporate culture all the way to being a creative entrepreneur and the expectations that people have about creatives. We talk about this in the episode, and Katherine shares a great example of an interior designer client who felt really boxed in before doing this work. Katherine explains 3 ways that women often hide in plain sight and why your personal style has nothing to do with vanity and is totally worth cultivating for your own happiness. We also talk about how she grew up as a competitive athlete and how that actually conditioned her to believe that she needed to struggle in order to succeed. She has since decided that that is not the case and tries to work with the motto, let it be easy. Let's jump in and talk with Katherine. Hello, Katherine. Welcome to the show.
Hi, Lindsay. Thanks for having me.
I'm so excited to talk with you. This is a dream of mine to talk with someone who does what you do. So I'm very much looking forward to all the great things that we're going to dive into. To get us started, I would love to just have you introduce yourself and what it is that you do for people.
Sure. So my name's Katherine Johnson, and I'm the founder of True Self Presence Consulting. And this really lives at the intersection of power, personal power, style, how we show up in the world, communication. And it's a bit of a unique intersection. I actually haven't really found many people who do things the way that I do, but at its essence, it's like, how are you showing up in the world and can people really see you? And so we look at this from a bunch of different lenses, and you can think about it as the inner game of your presence, which is kind of your own internal operating system. And then how do you translate that into a congruent and authentic external presence that really helps people see, hear, and value you?
Yeah. I love that so much because certainly I don't think when we initially think about image consulting or just image in general, I think we have an understanding of it's how we're presenting ourselves to the world, but I think we are thinking about it in this very external, what do I look like? What do I wear? How am I holding myself? What am I doing with my hands? You can see me right now.
Right.
And so we have this very external concept of it. And so even the name of your company, I think, is so amazing because it really is your mission of bringing out that true self and helping people, women particularly, feel like they're being truly seen in their lives, which I just love.
Yeah.
And I also, so one of the reasons that I really wanted to have you on is because I love this topic, of course, but I have an interior design and creative background. I'm really into aesthetics. I love fashion. I love decor. And for me, it's always had such a significant meaning because not just because it's beautiful, sometimes just because it is beautiful, right? Aesthetics are a part of our experience of the world. And but really it's always because the things that we surround ourselves, what we see in the room in front of us, what we see in the mirror is so much about how connected we feel to who we are and where we are in our life.
Yes, yes, I completely agree. And I find even just our relationship to aesthetics and beauty can be really complicated. It's like sometimes it's just through conversation with folks who are almost feeling prickly or kind of bristly about, well, paying attention to this is superficial, or if I'm going to be strong and powerful, this is too shallow. And even I had that reaction when I first got exposed to the work. I was very much about, like, I liked self-expression and doing that through style, but I wouldn't say I was like a fashionista or someone. Like, I was more into vintage and thrift and having creativity with that expression. But I didn't like the idea that I had to be a woman who cared about fashion. Like, if you told me that, then I would be like, don't tell me what to do. Like, I'm too deep for that. I'm a woman of substance. Do you know what I mean? So I was constantly having this tension, and I get that. So I'm very comfortable in those conversations and helping clients, women and men, but really identify, how do you feel when you're in nature? How do you feel when you're in a beautiful space? What does that kind of beauty do for you? What does it do to your nervous system? Well, we're covering 80% of our body with clothing, with textiles, with colors. And sometimes we're actually making ourselves invisible, or we're communicating, I don't care, or we're putting up armor instead of creating a frame
Mhm.
that is about people seeing you. It's not about people seeing the clothes, but it's giving people a new perspective to understand that they have a choice. And even if you say, well, I don't care, then you're choosing to put that out. And if I flip it for people and say, what do you feel like when you see someone you care about, a sibling, a parent, a best friend, a partner, and they just look great? And you're not like, oh, I like your outfit. You're just like, wow, you look radiant. You look so, there's so much vitality coming. Doesn't it make you happy? Like, isn't it a gift to others when you show up as your best self? Like, don't you love that when you see it in others?
Yeah.
So imagine if you showing up as the most congruent and radiant version of yourself, that is a gift to others. That is magnetic. And so we have to find a way to release that first layer of tension that's around image.
Yeah. Oh my gosh. Well, you said it so well. I'm not surprised, but yeah, I really relate to that very deeply. So I know that your work is very purpose driven. Just everything that you talk about, it seems like there's really a mission in you. And I have to assume then that it comes from kind of a meaningful backstory. It sounds like you've got a very personal connection to this. So, how did you get started in this world, and how has that evolved into what you are doing now?
It's definitely evolved. Like, I always want people to know, like, it was not a linear path for me, right? So if I could reach back 10 years ago to younger me, and I couldn't have envisioned how this was going to turn out or how I would get to this point. It was during a real transition in my life. So I had background in the private sector, and then I got my master's in teaching. So that's always been at the heart for me, is really working with people at all ages and being a lifelong learner. Like, I love learning and I love humans. Like, I just think we're fascinating, right? So I was at a time in my life where I was coming through a divorce. I'd been married for 10 years. I was now going to be a single mom. I was going through major identity loss. I really felt disoriented, and I wasn't going to go back to teaching. And so I had this moment of like career reinvention, but I didn't know what to do. And I was kind of terrified, because when you're going through major change or transition, you really kind of you lose your confidence, right? So here I was being like, I don't even know what I can do. You know what I mean? I couldn't see myself. So, big believer in therapy. So of course, this is a great time in life to have like your team. And so with my therapist, who knew me really well, I kind of went and was like, I don't know what I'm going to do here. And, she said, hey, if I could just take 3 minutes, I would love to introduce you or tell you about a woman in the Bay Area. I live on the West Coast. And she was like, a woman in the Bay Area who's a psychologist, who's an image consultant. And as I said earlier, I was like, no, I'm too deep for that. I would never want to talk about clothes all day, So here I was, like, puffing myself up, being like, I'm a woman of substance. I wouldn't do that. And the next thing she said just changed everything for me. She said, this isn't about clothes. This is about how are you showing up in the world, and can people really see you? And in my own life, I felt like people couldn't see me.
Mhm.
Like, that really struck a chord with me. So I started having conversations with this woman, and I ended up apprenticing with her for a year. And at that very same time, it got me on this path of understanding for myself, because I was going through change. It's such like fertile soil to build self-awareness of how invisible I felt, and invisible from a point of, I come from a competitive background in sports. I had a lot of national recognition. I knew from the outside it looked all pretty put together. Like, I was a high achieving, looked very put together person. But on the inside, I felt invisible. And that was painful, because that disconnect was like, I felt like I was a ghost in my own life. So there was this facade. But when you feel like there's nothing to back it up, Like that was a lot of energy to just keep this kind of false narrative going. And yet I didn't know what to do next. So this work, of course, I had to do it first. It was like perfect timing of what does this mean to be invisible? And so for me doing this work with folks, it is about, yeah, we have this toolbox, this kit of like palettes and textures, and we can create more alignment and you can be more in harmony. But we also have to be able to address, where are you hiding in plain sight? Like, what does this next level of visibility look like for you? And I have a lot of compassion for that. You know, I'm not finger pointing, telling people like you're doing stuff wrong. We tend to be doing the best we can with what we know how to do, but we're not taught any of this.
Right.
So clothing can feel really overwhelming, especially as you enter a new phase of your life. Your body is changing. You're wanting to show up, you know, as the boss of a business. If you're, you know, going off on your own, there's lots of things to consider. And we're like, most people I know are like, I don't even know how to do this. Like I waste so much energy and don't feel great about how I go out in the world.
Yeah. Yes. And I'm thinking too, like the should of how you think you should be looking. So it's so much easier to find examples of what you think it should look like. But I love what you said about like being, I'm not even going to get this right, but being a ghost, feeling like a ghost in your own body. I mean, that's so powerful to me. I want to go back and hear exactly what it was that you said, how you phrased it. But yeah, I think that these changes and transitions that we experience in our life over the course of life, it's not even necessarily because of massive changes, but in the course of our life, we're just going to continually evolve and not know exactly who we are, who we want to be. And so many times we are looking to that outside example and seeing and trying to figure out how we fit into that example. And it's the backwards approach, because it causes you to feel more lost and more disconnected.
Yes, that captures it. It's a backwards approach. And that's how people can end up feeling like they're stuck in an old version of themselves, or they're wearing a costume. Like that happens all the time, where sure, someone may have a look, but they're not getting the results they want, or they're not attracting clients, or they feel like they're not being heard. And when we start, you know, pulling it apart, I tend to see a couple different things. One is people using their clothes as an invisibility cloak. So they're not comfortable with being out there in front and connecting. So their clothes and their outfits literally say like, don't see me. They just fade into the background. And that can be the cut of clothes. It can be the colors they choose. It can be the styles, wearing clothes that are 2 sizes too big. You know, it's just ways that to hide, you know, and it's unconscious. Like people don't even realize they're doing it. And then the second one I see all the time is using their clothes like armor. And that's another costume. And that's saying like, oh, I'm the boss. I'm the boss lady. I'm going to look strong and powerful. But what it does is it also says I'm unapproachable. And again, it's totally understandable. Like as we put ourselves out there, we want to protect ourselves. So we create this armor. But connection matters more than anything. So people to feel your message, to have some sort of draw to you, they need more than just to see you as an expert. They need some humanity. So we have to find ways to both establish credibility and expertise and warmth. And our visual presence can do that before we even say a word. You know, I work a lot with speaking coaches and their clients, because you can have the very best message, but if people have tuned you out before you start talking because they've already decided whether you're worth listening to, it doesn't matter what your words are saying. Like we're such visual creatures. We're making meaning of it. And more than anything, we're making that decision based on, can I trust this person? Am I safe? So that's another reason for us to care and to be intentional, is people aren't doing it just to be judgy. I mean, we are hardwired to judge because we need to know, can I trust this person? And then we ask ourselves, can I respect their capabilities? So they're looking for both. It's not an either or. We want to show that, yes, we're a leader of our own lives. We have credibility, expertise. But before that, we have to show some warmth and let that come across. And that can feel very exposed and vulnerable. Like I've taken people who are in like exquisite armor, like the best outfits, but they're telling people like, you can only get so close.
Yeah.
Like I'm impenetrable.
Right. When
Yeah.
what they're really craving is connection.
More than anything, they're craving it. And what's really amazing is sometimes when we make those tweaks externally, like we figure out what are the colors. Instead of all black, maybe it's like rich plums or teals or something that has more warmth. Or like this color I'm wearing is a very like compassionate color. It's very opening. You don't have to change anything else. You can still have the strong message. You can still be, the boss. You don't have to change anything else, but you're visually giving yourself another dimension. And that's my hope for people is like, you get to show up as a 3-dimensional version of yourself.
Yeah. Oh, I love that.
Yeah. And then the last one I'll just mention, because this happens too, is friendly clothes. So I've talked about like invisibility cloak, armor. And then the third one that people kind of unconsciously do is like, just use their clothes as friendly clothes, which is like, I'm cute and likable. And that's too far on the warmth. And we don't see any of the credibility, right? People they aren't signaled, oh, this person is in charge, right? So we have to find that balance again. And it, the whole encompassing, part of my work is we do look at like body language and communication style and what your energy is when you walk in and your clothes, like all those things are coming together.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, for sure. I mean, they're sort of the like yin yang with energy and aesthetics, because your energy will inform your aesthetic, and your aesthetic also informs your energy. When you feel amazing in what you're wearing in your body, in your own skin, then you are naturally putting out that energy in the world.
Right.
Right. It's speaking all the same language. I think that's sort of what you're doing, is you're like making sure that all of the elements are speaking the same language.
Yes. And the word that I use around that is synchronicity. Like is animals, right? We are really good using our nonverbal brain at detecting synchronicity, which essentially is saying this person makes sense, right? Everything feels harmonious. It makes sense. It doesn't mean it's all the same. It's not like same. It just means it's all working together to make sense. And when something's off, we may not know what it is, but I'm sure you've had this feeling. I've had this where you're like, I don't know about this person. Like something just feels off, or they're trying too hard, or they don't seem comfortable in their own skin. Then we're not feeling as confident in them.
Right. That's when our brains go to work to like solve puzzles and
yes. And then we're not connecting because totally you've given us something to like be figuring out.
Yeah, exactly. So I just out of curiosity, what came to mind when you said friendly clothes is I think about the Lululemon, like everybody in the whole state of California, certainly like the northern part of Austin. Yeah, like it's common, right? But I think this, like the workout gear and the athleisure and the certain trends that we see towards this like blending in and homogeny, not saying any of that's bad, and it's comfortable, it's cute, it's whatever. But I that kind of sparked for me too, is because it's this sort of like, I just want to fit in. I just want to look like everybody else. And it's a literal putting on of the outfit to blend into the crowd so that no one would ever pick you out.
Right. Almost like a uniform, right? Like this is the uniform right now. I've seen that. I'll give you another example too. I've had a couple clients recently who were creatives. One is an interior designer and architect. And then another woman they both run their own business. Another's in the creative arts. And they both separately came to me and they're like, I'm a creative. I'm really good at what I do. But in terms of putting myself together, like I'm supposed to be a creative. So I actually feel extra pressure of how do I be a creative, have this style, where for clothing and wardrobe, it wasn't clicking for them. And so they were resorting to just all black, right? Well, I'll just be the creative who just wears all black all the time. But it felt heavy. Like that's the thing. When we go with the external modeling and do that, But then you start to pay attention. One was like, I feel like I'm going to a funeral every day. Like, I'm in my 40s. I want lightness. I want joy. I want, she wanted all these other things. And then every day she was like cloaking herself in this, black energetically is a very heavy color. And so when we found a way for her to define, like I call it creating your compass, your style compass, but when she had a very clear compass, those external expectations really, they just fell away because she felt very aligned and then oriented towards how she wanted to feel in the world. How did she want to show up? What was the energy she wanted to transmit? How did she, how could she be tapping into her personal power? And when she did that, then the external shoulds of this is how a designer should look lost kind of they weren't gripping so hard.
Yeah. Yeah. That makes so much sense. This is something I talk about a lot with in my work and my clients, but that internal compass, for no other reason, but to do this kind of work, to find that internal compass for yourself, that will change everything, because you're right. It's the instant permission slip for all the other outside things to fall away. It's the confidence that you have forever in your life of knowing that you can find the answer, that the answer is within you, that your preference is within you, that your capability is all there. It makes the outside stuff really and truly just noise. And you can tune it out so much easier when when you're able to turn up the volume on your own internal compass.
Right. Exactly. That. I love that. Turning up the volume. Yeah. And one of the things that to give people permission is I want them to build this muscle where we use a really simple scale, right? So I say, okay, on a scale of 1 to 10, you want to commit and be living, and we'll start with like your wardrobe as an example, but most people expand this to their whole life. It's like in your hell yes zone. And so what that means is you're only going to wear things that are an 8, 9, or 10 on a scale of 1 to 10. And you've already created this compass. So you have some language to evaluate how you want to feel. So now you're not just evaluating, is this a good outfit?
Yeah.
You're not taking something off a mannequin or off another person. You're actually learning to say, how does this work on me? And then you just very quickly, it's almost like a gut read. You don't overanalyze in your head. You just give it a number. And if it's an 8, 9, or 10, it's a hell yes. And then everything else is a no. And what that frees people up from is closets full of like 5, 6, and 7s. And we all have that. It's like the graveyard in our closet. And it's like, I can't get rid of it, or it kind of works, or I'll just settle for this. But you go and you take that energy out in the day. You're a 5. You feel like a 5 today. So you're kind of like, And so really saying you're giving yourself permission for every day to be an 8, 9, or 10.
Yes.
If everything else is a no, people are like, wow, I see things so more clearly. I get it. And then when they actually do land on a hell yes, they're like, oh yeah, I'm so excited. Like, this is a hell yes. So they might own less. They might have more of like a capsule wardrobe, but they're like, everything in it works and it works together. So they feel so much freer and more energized by the whole process of going out in their day.
Yeah.
Which is good.
Oh my goodness.
So much better.
Yes. I love that so much. So everybody listening, this is your challenge today.
Yeah.
You need to work with Katherine, but yeah, your challenge today is to really start thinking of not only your closet, but like, let's think of everything in life. Where does this fall on my scale? Like, we're aiming for 8, 9, and 10.
Yeah.
That's what we're
and
going for.
Everything else is a no. Yeah.
Everything else is a no. I love that so much. Awesome. So I want to talk about your creative upbringing a little bit. You mentioned having a background in athletics, but I also know from an earlier chat that you came up with a lot of creative people and entrepreneurial people in your life. So tell me a little bit about that. What I'd really like to dig into is just, how you found your place and your own voice as a creative when you were surrounded by people who are also doing really cool things.
Right. Okay. So again, it was not a linear journey. So I'll tell you, I'm still on my exploring my relationship within my family. Yes. I grew up in a family of artists. So my mother was a professional dancer and a model. My father is a painter. My grandfather was a musician his whole life, a jazz musician up until his 90s. And everyone else in my family, I have half siblings. They're all artists and creatives. And Somehow along the way there, I actually internalized a message that I wasn't creative. I was the youngest of 6 children, and we also had a lot of athletes in our family. And I took on like an identity of being an athlete and didn't feel like I was particularly creative. And yet now I can say I understand. I have always appreciated beauty through color, through textures, like spaces. I like my emotions are very much tied to aesthetics,
Mm-hmm.
right? And so when I started doing this work, I still didn't see it as a creative endeavor. Like I was not seeing myself that way. And I've had some really amazing mentors and friends and colleagues who literally have reflected back to me over the past 8 years, like what a creative exercise this is. And I really I own it now, but it was very interesting that I didn't see myself as a creative because it wasn't, you know, something that I'd seen in my family. You know, I wasn't like a painter who had my art in a gallery and it was being commissioned or sold. And I'm not a professional dancer and it was like, so I started to over identify with like to me, the, the, the grind of the business side instead of the beauty and the energizing aspects of being a creative.
Mm-hmm.
And so at a point, you know, I remember just saying to myself, you know what, like I'm going to just read and follow creatives because I had just completely turned my attention to all the, you know, I mean, it's important. You need to also know how to run a business. And so, but I lost touch with the side of I'm doing this as a creative. So I want to study and be inspired by other creatives.
Mm-hmm.
And that's been, I think, some of the biggest growth for me was to not compare, not even compare within my own family.
Yeah. So I know you said that you're still working on levels of this, right? But
Yes.
yeah, I think everybody listening can relate to that. If it's not within your family dynamic, just then certainly out in the world, in your industry, within seeing other creatives who do 15 different creative things versus you and your one creative thing. And so I certainly know that lots of people will be nodding their head along the lines of like, valuing your specific form and flavor of creativity. And I think that that's something that is really challenging regardless of where you came from and what you've been exposed to. So I also love that you said that you kind of took on this self education to dig back into this creative side and to really say like I want to fuel more of that experience for myself, and I want to touch more of my own, like your own guided experience of it versus what you were kind of shown was creative. I
Mm-hmm.
love that you took that on for yourself. And I'm bringing that up specifically too, because a lot of certainly my clients and just a lot of people in the creative space that I've come in contact with do kind of feel this tension between being a creative person or a creative being and being a business owner, and finding the balance between those two. And it is I'm not going to say easy, but just for the sake of picking a word, it's very easy to skew business once you get into business, right?
Mm,
Because the demands, it's like having a screaming toddler around all the time. The
right.
demands are great.
Right.
It's very like there's no chance that you're ever going to forget that you own a business once you own a business, right?
Right.
But you
Right.
certainly can forget that you're a creative spirit once you own a business.
Yes. Yes. I really relate to that. I really relate to that. Yeah.
So thinking of this, like, I'm going to take on my own education or my own like immersion therapy
Mhm.
into the creative world, I think that's another thing that people listening could really take and put into practice of just like what you said. It wasn't, you didn't take a sabbatical for a year. You decided to follow and read and just like give yourself that, again, permission to go and explore all of the different creative means and methods and things that inspired you. Where did you start with that? What was your go-to?
You know, I did a couple things that I was, you know, just the way we feed ourselves and what we nourish ourselves with, I started to look at what was I consuming, whether through social media or just everywhere. Like, what was I paying attention to? What was I feeding myself with? And I identified some people I wanted to follow, like things I would see in my feed. I also just wanted to create more space. So taking myself off of, I have this, like I mentioned earlier, this real love of being a lifelong learner, but it can also be, that's something that can be a real strength of mine, but it can also become a Achilles heel because it almost becomes like this runaway train of like learning, and what do I need to be listening to and what do I need to be taking? And so I've experienced something pretty profound for myself this past year, which was actually just being with myself and having more quiet and more space.
Mm-hmm.
That's done a lot for me. And then finding creativity, through things like being in my body, through dancing, through movement, making sure I'm, listening to the type of music that, energizes me or matches what I want to feel. Things like that. And being, I think I set myself the goal, and I may have fallen off the wagon a little bit, but I was like, okay, before noon each day, I want to have tapped into something creative, that doesn't even have to be related to my business.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Things like that. And then also as I go, I have a dog. So when I'm walking my dog, I'm like, I want to notice one beautiful thing, one moment. Like, where's the moment, and
Yeah.
just, I think that comes back to being really present, and like you
Absolutely.
said, the business side is a screaming toddler, and it can just make you feel so, productive, right? Because things to do, but the creativity just comes from a different side of the brain, and feeling creative for me comes from, being more in my body and feeling inspired and seeing. I'm just like looking around my house, like looking at colors, and I don't. It's just I have to make space for it.
Yeah. Yeah. I love that. And it is when we really pause and look, it is such simple things that we
Mm-hmm.
do to, like, really truly, if we are to dissect where our inspiration comes from,
Mm-hmm.
it's such simple things. It's that we put ourselves into situations, that we move our bodies, that we take that extra moment to look up and
Mm-hmm.
see the trees above us and notice that the flowers are blooming, and those kinds of things really are those moments. I love that you said you like having a moment or creating a moment.
Mm-hmm.
That is that's the thread of all of our inspiration. That's the thread of all of the things that we do ultimately produce and create through our work. That it all comes from these like simple moments of being able to tap in to something, anything. And generally it is something, anything that doesn't have anything to do with our business. It's just for us first.
Right.
And we're
Right.
able to do something really profound with it after we give ourselves our own gift.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. For me, I know, like, I just love, I think it goes back to my being a teacher. I love the kind of wonder in children, that kind of awe and delight. And so I love that. That's where, if I can find that beautiful moment, or if I can observe, if I can observe a person walking down the street and be like, oh, that's a beautiful moment I just saw with that person and their child, or I just delight in it. And then that's like a lift, and there wasn't an agenda. You just have to be open. You have to like be open and like be open to seeing something.
Yeah. Yeah. Oh, I love that. So, what do you find then to be the most challenging thing about holding space for both this like very creative and
Mhm.
you and open, and then very productive and getting a lot of stuff done in your life?
Well, one I've mentioned a little bit, which is comparison. I think that to me is like a devil that I have to keep an eye on, because there's the looking to others to be inspired,
Mm-hmm.
seeing other people's creative processes, and there's parts of that I love, but then if I sink too far into where I'm comparing with it, and then that's not a healthy place for me.
Mm-hmm.
And then I mentioned earlier that I have a background in sports, and what I have observed about myself, and this is something that I see cropping up in as a business owner, is realize I had an association, just take that simple, sports saying, like, no pain, no gain. I worked really hard as an athlete. So the work ethic I had of, like, you work and work and work, and then there's a reward, um, an outcome in the competition.
Mm-hmm.
I would say that that seated and stuck in me is like a commitment to struggle, like thinking you have to have that struggle before you can have something happen. And so not having a relationship with, like, ease and flow. And for me, that has been, I mean, I've been in business 8 years. It continues to evolve as I try to, like, release the grip of a commitment to struggle, thinking that that's how it has to be. That's how you get things to happen. And it doesn't have to be that way. Like, I don't believe it has to be that way, but it's so hardwired in for me.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, and like you were saying too, as an athlete and in certain ways in business, it is applicable.
Mm.
This is the challenge that we have, right? Because there's no such thing as just like black and white, cut and dry. All
Mhm.
of these things are both our superpowers and our Achilles heels.
Right, right.
So that part of you has done amazing things, certainly as an athlete. And it's also helped you accomplish some amazing things as an entrepreneur. But your job then is like looking at this in a holistic way, and your job to in order to be happy, because that's the goal ultimately, happy and satisfied in your life, is to know when is this appropriate and when isn't it, when is letting it be easy, when is getting into flow a more productive and a more appropriate way of being. And it can be really challenging to learn those boundaries for yourself.
Right. And I think that's part of what I have experienced in these past, almost 10 years, because it's the ability, like you're saying, to be discerning, right? What is needed in this moment. And so I can appreciate, I have a lot of resilience, and can keep coming back, and that muscle has even developed even more. Being an entrepreneur, you have to, like, that, it's like, I'm happy about that, but it's when I stay too long in that, it becomes this commitment to struggle, instead of saying, "Oh, what if I step away right now? Or what if things are coming and you can let these opportunities come?" Like, I've seeded the work, trusting that I do all the things that are needed, and I stay in it. And so then things are going to arise, and I can trust in them.
Yeah.
Seeing it more holistically, because it is cyclical, and they're all happening. It isn't just only this or only that. So that's like an inner game. So for me, when I talk about presence and inner game, like, that's understanding my own inner game, and dismantling some things that get in my way.
Yeah, absolutely. So I love that. And that's lifelong work that you are always doing to whatever that next degree will be. What would be like an example of something that's been really helpful for you in undoing that commitment to struggle?
One is not trying to do everything alone, because really having colleagues or people, that I'm growing with, who are also entrepreneurs growing their own businesses, like, they get it. It's so helpful, because the more isolated I've ever been, the harder it is. And so that's done huge for me. And, going back to those challenges, even I talked about, with the different levels of, like, how we cut connection, like, letting people know that you need help, or you're even talking about it, can feel very exposed. It's not just how we use our visual presence to do it, sharing what's going on. And so there's been a huge return on investment, to use a financial expression, on developing, professional friendships where I feel supported, and because people can mirror back to you something that you cannot see about yourself.
Yeah.
Yeah.
very quickly.
Very quickly. In a good way. Like that you
so
need
easy for them to do it. Yeah.
Yeah. So I just think it's hardest for us to see ourselves. So those relationships and mentors and putting ourselves in places where we can grow as business owners and creatives is there's such a huge return. You know what I mean? I mean, I think being an entrepreneur is like the fastest path to personal growth.
Totally agree. It's a long and painful and arduous path, but it's
worthwhile. I believe it. I'm like, but it is so worthwhile.
Yeah, exactly. I could not agree more. This is an amazing life. If you're an entrepreneur, you have the most amazing life.
Yeah, you do. And it's, there's another saying that I think about a lot, and it ties into just these last couple topics we've been talking about. And it's, the way you move towards something is the way it will be when you get there. And so when we put out like, oh, when I just get there, so take my like commitment to struggle, like, oh, it always has to be hard, but when I get wherever, whatever outcome, it'll get easier. No, that commitment to struggle is not going to change. It is just going to be like the new level. It'll be however it shows up at that point. So you start now, like you start addressing it and making those shifts now. And so in doing that, not only is the journey, more enjoyable and I can kind of ride the waves of whatever are happening, but then, when I get there, I will be in a much better place for wherever it is I arrived. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
So that's why that commitment to struggle, it is something I can't like keep putting off till when I, make a certain amount of money or when my business looks a certain way. I realized, no, it has to be now because I'm the way I move towards it is the way it will be when I get there.
Yeah. I love that. That's such a beautiful way to say it. It's I talk about that a lot on this podcast. The whole process of it and who you are today and how you're treating yourself and how you're showing up today is what's manifesting in your future, because there's no other time that it will. Right. Like now is the time.
Right.
But yeah, I really, really like the way that you said it. The way you move towards something is the way it's going to be when you get there.
Yeah. And I can't remember where I heard that. I heard that from someone else. So I definitely want to like attribute it to, but I can't remember if it was like a therapist or something I read, and it stuck with me. So somebody out there has said a really helpful thing.
Very sticky. Now everyone else gets to have it stuck in their minds too. I love that. That's so good. Awesome. Well, coming back to what you do specifically, what is something that you would like everyone, whoever encounters you or your work, everything that we've talked about today, what's something that you want everyone to know?
I want them to know that their presence matters. Like people being able to see you and connect with you is ultimately such a powerful thing. And you deserve to show up in your own life. Like that's where your personal power comes from, is just authentically showing up as you are, who you are now in your life. And it continues to evolve. So how you show up will evolve. Like it isn't this static thing. So, it comes to that self-worth of like, show up, let people see you. It's a gift to others.
Yes. Oh, yes. I love that. Okay. So who is an ideal client to work with you and where should they start?
An ideal client is someone who feels that disconnect between, well, I have a sense of who I am now, but I don't feel like I'm showing up as that person, right? And I don't know how to do it. And so it's kind of this uncomfortable space that they're in. And again, it may be because of changes, big or small, just a new chapter of life, a new decade. So many things can bring it about. Change is it's inevitable. Like change is normal. It's what you do with it. So that person is feeling a nudge and wanting to show up more congruent. Like there is now an appeal, and it's like, I cannot live this way anymore. Either as a ghost, feeling invisible. I feel an urgency now that I want to have more impact. So that tends to be the why. They're driven with I want to make more impact. I have a message I want to get out. I have work that's important in the world. And so that is now the catalyst for why they understand they need to be showing up in a way where people can see them.
Awesome. I love it. And what would you say would be the starting point?
Oh, well, I would say with me is go to my website. There's lots of resources on there. You can get more of a sense about my philosophy and my style and see, clients I've worked with. And then I have a course I designed that's based on all 8 years of working one-on-one with people to really create an accessible way for people to get started. So it's a digital course they can do on their own. And then if they want to get in touch with me, that's on the website, everything, you can kind of go from there. But, it just needs to feel like a good fit because it's such a deeply personal exercise, this idea of like coming forward that you want to feel like you can trust and be seen by whoever you're going to share this process with. So that's where I'd say, just go try. I mean, you're getting a sense of me now, but go learn more.
Awesome. I love it. And what is your website?
It is www.trueselfpresence.com.
Okay. I will link that in our show notes as well, but I always like to have it said out loud. So go to truepresenceself.com.
True self-presence. You got all the words, but you have in the wrong order.
I was going to do that. As it was coming out, I'm like, that doesn't sound right. This is why we write it down. And check out the digital course because that is going to be a really good piece to start with, to dig into, to start doing those exercises. You will learn so much more about yourself than even ultimately what you're aiming for. But yeah, I love that you have created something that's digital that people can really get into and see what this is all about. So Katherine, thank you so much for being here. This has been such a great and deep and meaningful and beautiful conversation.
Thank you for inviting me. I have really enjoyed this conversation, Lindsay.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Katherine. Do you love these weekly doses of insight and inspiration for your business? Then you gotta join me in the Maverick HQ. This is our listener library full of helpful tools to create clarity, spark creativity, and manage your time and energy like a boss. It's all inside the Maverick HQ, and it's totally free for you. Head to lindsaybrownson.com/Maverick to join me right now. I'll see you inside.